Hey DevOps people, do you still recognize me? I'm Johan, the Monospace Mentor. Welcome to Full Stack Live. I was about to say my live coding channel, but there hasn't been any live coding this week. This is my office hour. Hello Praxeus, hey King's Yard, how you doing? Happy to see that you like my keyboard. It's a new Model F, a keyboard that weighs about, I'd say, 2.5 kilos, something like that. So you can definitely use it as a personal defensive weapon, and it's also a great input device. And yeah, so the reason why there hasn't been any live coding this week is because I was in Berlin to attend DevOps Days. And yeah, I was looking forward to attend DevOps Days, to meet people again, people who I met in previous DevOps Days before the plague, and to exchange experience and DevOps, SRE knowledge, things like that. Unfortunately, I was a little bit disappointed. I'm not sure what happened. Those events don't seem the same anymore. And I was talking to one of the organizers, and they told me that it's become really, really hard to get people to attend in-person conferences. And, well, I can see that, of course, from a health perspective, with all the stuff that goes around, still does. COVID is not over. And also with the financial side of things, you have to travel, you have to get accommodation, you have to pay for the event ticket, things like that. And it's hard to pay that out of pocket, or maybe even to get your employer to pay for it. I can see all these things, but that definitely, well, that latter part did not change, did it? I mean, you had to pay for the same things 10 years ago too. The health issue wasn't there, fortunately. But yeah, I think part of the reason might also be that the character of these conferences has changed, maybe especially DevOps Days. The DevOps Days I remember were really lively and buzzing. You had lots of experts around that were able to talk about basic SRE stuff, even though the term SRE might not even have been coined at that time. So what I mean is automation, I guess the whole CAMS stuff with culture, automation, metrics, and sharing. And that was really great, especially during DevOps Days, where we had this open space format where everyone could contribute a topic, get a location assigned, and then people went there to participate in the conversation. Nowadays, I can only speak for the DevOps Days that I attended, mainly the previous one this week. Nowadays, DevOps Days seem to have deteriorated to how to use Terraform and AWS so you don't need operations. And of course, for me as an operations person, that's really missing the mark. I'm not interested in just using AWS in the most efficient way, in the least expensive way, things like that. That definitely is important when you use AWS. But if that's all that we are going to discuss at these events, then I don't see myself attending them anymore. Back in the day we were talking about how to use Grafana and how to get metrics into Grafana using services like StatsD, all that stuff. And I'm not sure if we've become so development focused that everything revolves around how developers can get stuff into production. Or if, as Praxeus seems to hint at, if operations is devolving into the 13 ways to get your application running on AWS. I'm really not sure, but something has changed that made me disinclined to attend events like that. Well, in my excitement to get back talking to people again, I've lined up 2 more conferences in 4 weeks. I'm going to StackConf, which is also going to be in Berlin, and only 2 weeks later I'll be at the Ruby Conference in Hamburg. So at the moment my attendance is mainly focused on Germany. That's actually not really intentional, but yeah, things happen this way. I'll have to look at other venues as well. I think I did look at DevOps Days Amsterdam, but they are just in the middle of high season where you pay lots for the flight, lots for accommodation. So that led me to decide not to attend DevOps Days Amsterdam, even though I would be really interested because it would enable me to stay at my favorite hotel in Amsterdam, which is the Citizen M at the airport. But it is what it is. Hello, Tiberian. Hello, Exegete. How is it going? I hope you're having a great week and are heading into a great weekend. Praxeus also said there's also a greater offering of virtual conferences and communities, and I think that's the ideal way to address both the finance and health sides of this issue. Yeah, I'll definitely also make an effort of attending those conferences as well. Praxeus also says it's hard to ignore AWS because it's quickly becoming the default way. Yeah, they do have quite the pull. That's an interesting thought here. There's ways to import the AWS CLI to Proxmox and use a few different connectors. There's safer ways to pay with it. Also, AWS itself has built a lot of onboarding training stuff for free. Oh, I see. Mm-hmm. So, you mean even in your local development and testing, you can do AWS-like workflows. And that, of course, is a great way to on-ramp AWS usage. Yep. Not saying that AWS is bad, but it's just not what I'm interested in as someone who's on the ops side of the DevOps paradigm. Exegete is still trying to find good virtual conferences. Yeah, I mean, with more conferences, let's hope there will be a few good ones in between, and it's not going to be a sea of mediocrity. Arizona's like a conference desert. Well, Arizona is like a desert in general, isn't it? No, I have no idea. I'm talking out of my behind here. Yeah, but I can imagine that there are hotspots for conferences, of course, places like LA, and places where conferences simply really aren't viable. Even though, for example, RubyConf seems to hop around quite a bit. And why not pull RubyConf to Flagstaff? How's that for a thought? All right, folks, we need to get to the main topic of today, which is, of course, my office hour, where you ask the questions and I, hopefully, give the answers. If you have any questions about Linux system administration, about software engineering, put them onto the Q&A board at qa.monospacementor.com. qa.monospacementor.com is where I collect your questions. You can even upvote questions by other people, and I'll get them on my screen and try to answer them. If it's something that requires me to demonstrate, I'll be happy to do that too, if it doesn't require too much preparation or setup. So don't hold back. Your questions can be theoretical. They can also be very practical. If you'd like to ask me how I do search and replace in Vim, I'm happy to demonstrate that too. Post your questions or requests to the Q&A board at qa.monospacementor.com, and I'll see what I can do for you. Proxius asks, where is it? What was your favorite non-tech interaction of the con? I'll be honest, I didn't have too many interactions at all. I think one of the most pleasant interactions was when I talked to one of the sponsors, because there was a personal connection there. And we talked about all kinds of things, about repurposing old ThinkPads, about framework laptops, things like that. So just seeing other people's perspective there was really interesting. And then, of course, the thing that I like the most is meeting people again that I've also met at previous conferences. Just refreshing these relationships alone is definitely worth something. Just not sure if it's worth the whole trip. I think I'll need something more than that, because otherwise I could simply arrange Zoom calls with people once in a while. Exit says, I did go to the One Rails Conf in Arizona. It was great, though I didn't know about the hallway track at that time. And what was the consequence of that? Were you surprised? Did it hit you unprepared? Or did you simply miss it because you didn't know about it? And I assume by hallway track you mean the virtual track that's part of every conference, which is people meeting in the hallways and saying hello and talking about all kinds of stuff. Proxea says, I always find the personal relationship aspects of cons really nice. I do too. As an introvert, it's really draining, so often if there is a lot of personal interaction during the day, I won't attend any social events in the evening because, I need that time alone in my hotel room to recharge my socialization batteries. Yes, there is something different about having a meal with old friends versus eating on a video chat. Yeah, eating on a video chat is really awkward. Oh, I see. Not knowing about the hallway track meant that you basically tried to get your calendar full of talks, hopping between all those tracks and trying to get as much as possible. And then not even getting to joining the hallway conversations. Yeah, that is a shame, definitely. I think I made the same mistake in my early conferences as well. Trying, yeah, I'm here. It's cost a lot of money, so let's get the most out of it. Okay, let's see. That's 9:30 here, and then okay, at 11 I need to be there, and then there's the big keynote in the big hall, and then it's lunchtime. After lunch, I'll go there. Yeah. That is definitely a rookie mistake that I made as well. Roxanne says, I'm completely get that. My approach is to set the boundary of, right now I'm in social mode, let's talk shop tomorrow, online or after the con, so that we have time to focus on it. Yep, makes sense to keep these things separate if necessary. Yep, that's a good approach to things. I'll need to keep that in mind. So there is a question on the board, so let's get that on the screen. What is your favorite lesser-known shortcut to the less command? I don't actually have a shortcut to the less command. I always type it out. One thing that surprised me more is that there is a view command that launches VI in basically kiosk mode, so you can't edit a file, but you can use all the nice navigation key combinations to view a file. So I'd say view is a lesser known alternative to the less command. But if you have a favorite lesser known shortcut, please share it in chat. Actually, it says I use less to display a file, then use the ampersand to search for something within that file. Wait, the ampersand? Not the slash? Oop. Didn't notice that I'm resting my water bottle on my iPad. That's probably not a good idea. What does the ampersand do in particular? I've seen that referenced recently, but it didn't stick for me. So please refresh my memory. That's actually a good call. Let's try it. Why not? So let me see. If I do say less.config gmarksenator .files. Okay, and let's see what happens if I maybe use ampersand for project. Oh, it did a ampersand slash, so it's a combination of ampersand and slash. Okay. Ooh, it doesn't only search for that stuff, it basically filters it out and leaves only the lines that have that in there. That's where I saw it mentioned in relation to parsing log files. So you can easily filter out lines that have a specific word like error in them or fatal, and that's definitely more handy than using first grep-v to filter those out, or use grep in general, and then pipe everything to less. That is really, really helpful. I need to keep that in mind. Note to self, use ampersand. Then there's Tiberian saying, on one conference in Belarus, was allowed to drink free beer. It gives me social interaction boost and ask questions to speakers and win 2 umbrellas as a gift for best questions. Yeah, you can grease the wheels by, grease the gears by giving out free beer. Actually, that does tend to lower inhibitions. And I did ask a question during DevOps days that was 80% a joke, and I felt my heart beating 5 minutes after that, because even doing things like that where it's not really serious or really relevant, it still triggers my fight or flight reflexes to expose myself. In a mental way, not in a physical way, of course. Again, people post your questions to qa.monospacementor.com and watch me trying to answer them. We have a very interesting question here. What is your tactic for monitoring when a cron job fails? That's a very good question, because especially people who just learned how to set up a cron job will probably be still struggling with the time format, but often not account for this exact scenario that your cron job might fail, and might fail a lot over time without you noticing. And especially if your cron job is a backup or something like that, then you might notice too late that it hasn't been running successfully in quite a while. Not that that ever happened to me. For example, what was that? Was it when I switched from my Synology NAS that's hidden behind the question board at the moment to my bigger home lab server? I think I switched backup configuration to the home lab server, but made a mistake. And then for 10 days or so, I did not notice that my backups didn't work anymore. And I'm happy that I was able to find that without needing the backup. So how do we make sure our cron job are either successful or if they fail, that we know of that? I think there are multiple ways to do this. That depends on the tools that you'd like to throw at these things. One thing that you can do is add the Notify service to the mix. Exegete converted me to the Church of Notify a long time ago, NTFY. That's a free notification service that you can use to get notifications in specific cases. So you could, for example, write a script that gets executed by your cron job. The script first does the main task that it's supposed to do, and then it checks for error conditions, and if those are met, then it sends a notification to let you know that something went wrong. That's one way to go about it. In our managed hosting platform that my company is running, we found another way to do something like that. We are using Chef for configuration management. And of course, we need to know if Chef starts failing on a specific node, because that means the node isn't keeping up with changes anymore. If Chef constantly fails, it's becoming inconsistent with how it's supposed to be. And of course, we need to be notified about that. And since we are more and more switching to Prometheus as our monitoring tool, we found a clever way, that is that the Prometheus node exporter, which exports basic node metrics like CPU load, disk space, things like that, also has a module that can check text files. And what we did was, every time at the end of our Chef run, we touch a specific text file, and Prometheus then keeps checking if this text file has an up-to-date timestamp. And if it doesn't, that means the Chef client hasn't been running successfully anymore. And in that case, we have a rule that says, if the timestamp of this file is behind, say, an hour, then trigger an alert. Because usually we run our Chef clients every 10 minutes. And so if the text file hasn't been touched in an hour, that means several Chef client runs have failed, and there is something serious about this. And that way, we had an easy way to get this triggered without writing a specific Prometheus exporter or something like that. We simply had Prometheus collect metrics from this specific file, among them the modification date, and then we were able to formulate a Prometheus query that simply says, if the modification time of this file is 3,600 seconds behind now, then trigger an alert. So that's also a way, of course, to do this with a cron job. Touch a file as part of the cron job, and by touch I mean update the modification date of a specific file, and then monitor this modification date and get alerted if it's getting too old or if it doesn't change anymore. If you have other strategies to monitor cron jobs, please share them in chat. That's a very interesting topic, because cron jobs are very basic ways to automate stuff on a system, and automation is important, always. So finding ways to make this automation more robust is a very important part of system administration. Here we have another question, very practical one. What is your way to create a load balancer with persistent static high availability IP on a bare metal installation? The way I tend to implement that is using Nginx. Simply by running Nginx as a proxy, especially if we're talking about HTTP load balancing. Nginx is very capable. It is definitely high performance. And the high availability part depends on the infrastructure, but most infrastructure providers can provide you with what some call a floating IP or others call a virtual IP that you can actually switch between servers. So that's how I tend to do it. Have two machines running Nginx with the same configuration. In the case of our hosting platform, of course, this configuration is also managed by Chef. And if we need to, we can simply switch the virtual IP over to the second Nginx node and minimize downtime that way. Most of the time we don't automate the switchover because we are pretty quick in noticing these issues and switching over manually, and having someone keep an eye on things and determine if a failover is the better approach, or maybe rebooting a machine or something like that is more efficient, is helpful in many cases as well. We don't have these extremely high availability requirements that would require complete automation. But if we had these requirements, there are, of course, solutions like Heartbeat, for example, that would allow to do that too. But yeah, Nginx is definitely my go-to load balancer software, especially for general purpose applications. Sometimes we also use Varnish as a load balancer if it comes to high performance load balancing, because Varnish can provide the high performance and the load balancing feature as well. So that's definitely also an alternative. But when you ask me load balancer, ? I'll answer with Nginx, period. Different area of question: when you need to architect an entire system with services and network, locally hosted or remote, service management, all this kinds of stuff, orchestration, I guess. Sorry, I'm just... Where do you even start? And how do you eat that elephant? I usually try not to eat any elephants, because they are pretty rare, especially elephants here in Ireland are very, very rare. So I don't think eating them would be a good idea, not even touching the topic that I'm a vegetarian. So, I usually try to visualize things. So try and use something like eraser.io or another sketching application, maybe even a drawing application on a tablet, to visualize the relationships, the complexity of the system. I did get that, Praxeus, no worries. No need to apologize. Slice by slice. Slice by slice. The answer you expected was elephant carpaccio. Yeah, so yeah, I think visualizing things definitely helps to get into the topic, to find out where are hidden issues, hidden relationships, cyclic relationships, things like that. That's definitely something. And then I'll probably apply a divide and conquer method to these things, okay, let's take a look at this part, let's take a look at this component. So that's the slice by slice approach, I guess. But it all starts with visualization, or at least writing things down on a note in my personal knowledge management system, where I list all the stuff and try to really get everything out on paper, even if it's just virtual paper.
It's a Unix system. I know this.
Jay Haynes, welcome to the stack. Thanks for the follow. Yeah, so just to get things in front of my eyes, I guess I'm a very visual person in that regard. That definitely is my first approach to tackle everything, I guess, even if it's a smaller thing. For example, if I'm writing a new monospace monologue, a mentor monologue, which is always part of my newsletter, I start to write. I start with writing key takeaways, maybe sketching out an outline, things like that. That always helps me to structure things and see where those particular slices even are, so that I can tackle them one by one. Paxaya says, I like diagramming on pen and paper. That's definitely also a great approach. I'm not a great fan of paper anymore. I tried several times. I even have notebooks here behind me on my shelf, but I don't use them very often. I very rarely use them, actually. Here's another question, and don't hold back with adding more on qa.monospacementor.com. Do you do any end-to-end monitoring of your systems? For example, does your monitoring prove that consumers can perform all of the critical tasks inside your system? Usually we don't, because let me take a step back. End-to-end monitoring. No, we don't yet. My first answer was based on, do we monitor customer websites in this way? And my answer would have been, no, we don't, because that's more responsibility of our customers who are familiar what their application does in the first place. And we usually aren't. We usually don't know what they do and where the processes are and what's where the most important processes are even. That we don't, and it's basically out of scope of our service. But of course, you could apply the same to our own infrastructure. And we don't do that yet. It could prove valuable, though. So I'll use your question as a reminder to think about this a little bit in the near future. If there is a way where we can actually monitor not only metrics and stuff, but also functionality, where we can actually prove that specific things work. For example, of course, we are monitoring our databases, and we do monitor specific health parameters of these databases, but we don't yet fire queries on these databases and make sure that a specific database, for example, does even exist or something like that. So that might come in the future. It'll definitely make things more complex because we have so many infrastructure components, but I can see the value in doing that. So thanks for the inspiration there.
It's a Unix system. I know this.
Fabio Souza, welcome. Thanks for the follow. I really appreciate it. Fabio, this is my office hour where I take questions and answer them. So if you'd like me to answer any question about system administration or software development, career questions, stuff like that, and I'm also happy to demonstrate something like how would you script something like that, or something practical. If you'd like me to demonstrate something, as long as it's simple enough to do in this space, I'm more than happy to do that. Simply post stuff to qa.monospacementor.com. Exit sheet wrote, how do you put an elephant in a refrigerator? An engineer will ask questions like, how big is the elephant, how big is the refrigerator, etc. A manager will say, open the door, elephant in, close the door. Asking no questions. I think you're selling managers short there a little bit, though, don't you? Having been a manager, I would say not all managers are like that. That's but it's definitely I don't deny that there are pointy-haired bosses all around. My question to you would be, if you're running Linux on a Lenovo ThinkPad, which model is it? I've grown very fond of ThinkPads since I refurbished one T480 for my son. Oof, lots of questions popping up here, so let's tackle them. That's also Elephant Carpaccio. Let's start with what is your general approach to project management? Oof, that's a sore topic, I'll admit, because I've tried many approaches to do project management internally, and most of them failed for one reason or another. The way we are doing things at the moment is that we use GitLab as our project management platform, where we have epics for the big initiatives that we are running. And then we split things up into separate issues that we can then track, because most of the stuff that we are doing in projects is of course engineering work that relates directly to some repository. If it's our chef cookbook repository, our dashboard, Rails application repository, or any other. And so using issues to track our progress was pretty straightforward. And that does actually work quite well for us. Everything else that we've tried by using, say, more sophisticated task management systems like Asana or purpose-built project management platforms like Basecamp, they never really helped us. They created more paperwork and meta work than they really improved our efficiency. So yeah, at the moment we are using GitLab issues to track stuff, and that works well for us. It's not very sophisticated. It does the job though. Another question is, what is one thing you run in your home lab that most people don't know about and should? The more interesting question would be, what am I running that people shouldn't know? Unfortunately, there is nothing. I don't run any secret stuff. I mean, I don't even run a torrent tracker or something like that in my home lab. Yeah, thanks for the question. That's definitely an interesting one. But I can show you my Proxmox dashboard, and you'll see that things are really run of the mill at the moment. Let me get that actually on screen for you. Let's see. Let's switch screens to the full screen here. So here you can see my home lab server. We should be able to pull this up a little bit more. Yeah, we do. Here's my one Proxmox node at the moment. PVE1 is a refurbished Dell 5820 workstation, and I'm running very boring stuff on there. Pi-hole is of course part of my network setup. Borg is just a little container that bridges my Borg backup clients on, say, my workstation with the NAS that also runs on the HomeLab server. That's a NAS 2 here, which is a true NAS scale instance, to which I have added the 4 spinning Rust drives that I have added to the server. So the true NAS scale has direct access to the hardware and manages 18 terabytes of storage there. Then there is a Minecraft server that I spin up from time to time to play with the kids. HAOS is Home Assistant, which controls everything around the house in terms of lighting and stuff. Then there is a Portainer instance where I run most of my lightweight services, like a Jellyfin instance, things like that. There's a Windows 11 machine that I spun up especially to try if I can get more out of a Steam Deck using Windows 11. The result was I don't actually. And those 2 MySQL instances there were test instances where I played with replication and stuff. And then there's a few templates that I use to quickly create new VMs. There is actually a service on my Portainer instance that I'd like to show you, because it's new. I'll just have to go grab the URL, actually. Give me just a second. We'll need a port number, won't we? Let me see. Where's Portainer? Here we are. Copy link. Doop, doop, doop. And yeah, that's 9443. Accept the risk, yes. Even though it's only HTTP. So this is my Portainer instance running on Proxmox, where I run stuff that's easier to deploy as Docker containers. I have stuff like Uptime Kuma here that does basic monitoring of everything. I've already shown Tube Archivist on stream in a previous stream. Tube Archivist is basically a whole system that pulls videos of YouTube and archives them using Elasticsearch for the title, description, everything. I think it even pulls in the transcript and puts that into Elasticsearch as well. So search is very effective using Tube Archivist. And that's the way I watch YouTube stuff. Because by subscribing stuff into Tube Archivist, I get everything that I want to see, and the algorithm doesn't have any chance of distracting me or getting me to view stuff that I don't really want to watch. The Nginx Proxy Manager here gives me easy access to all these services using a well-known host name. Jellyfin and Heimdall are typical citizens of a HomeLab server, but something that I've recently added is Audio Bookshelf. And Audio Bookshelf is a great way to manage audiobooks and podcasts. And it's far superior to, say, Jellyfin in that regard. I tried to get my audiobooks into Jellyfin, but that failed completely, while getting them into Audio Bookshelf was really, really easy. I pulled down all my audiobooks from Audible, where I purchased all of them, and I used Calibre to remove the DRM to turn them into unprotected MP3 files. And then I simply added the directory on my media server on share on the NAS to Audio Bookshelf, and it started indexing everything, getting the cover images either out of the MP3 files or from the internet, and that resulted in a nice way to show these things and manage them. And Audio Bookshelf also has client applications that you can use from your phone, so that you can easily listen to your audiobooks when you are out and about as well. So yeah, turns out the answer to the original question, what is the one thing you run in your home lab that most people don't know about and should, is audio bookshelf. There is a question that has been upvoted, so I'll answer that first. What are some essential readings for someone starting a career in software development? And by the way, if you just joined recently, I'm Jochen, the Monospace Mentor. This is my office hour. I do this every Friday, where I take your questions and try to answer them from multiple decades of experience in software engineering and system administration. If you have any questions, post them to qa.monospacementor.com and we'll get to them in due time. So what are some essential readings for someone starting a career in software development? Essential readings, that's interesting. That's definitely something I should write a blog post about, because what I usually do is I do courses, workshops, I offer mentorship for engineers, either in site reliability engineering or software engineering. And so having a essential reading list is definitely something that I should be able to provide. And actually, let me write that down right now, so I don't forget it. Essential reading for junior developers. Noted. Thank you for the inspiration. See, that's why I do these streams, because it's always a two-way street. I learn from you, and hopefully you can learn something from me as well. So, essential readings, I guess those are more general readings that don't relate to some specific technology. The first book that comes to mind is Clean Code, but I'll add a caveat there. Not only is the author of that book, Robert C. Martin, or Uncle Bob, as he's often called, a little bit controversial. The whole clean code topic is also something that gets widely interpreted by people, and you can always distort something in a way that it isn't useful anymore, maybe even harmful. So with that disclaimer, I'd say Clean Code is still inspirational, because it makes you think how you can make your code more maintainable, not only for other people on your team, but also for future you. And I think it's still valuable for that. So yeah, that is definitely something that I would recommend. Keep in mind that it's not the Bible that some people make it out to be. Something that I really, really enjoyed reading and rereading and rereading is actually the book Practical Object-Oriented Design in Ruby. I like it so much that I even added a chat command for that. And yes, it's about Ruby, but I think many of the principles in there apply beyond that specific language. Because, object-oriented design is something that you can do in all kinds of object-oriented languages. And I'm pretty sure I can translate the stuff that I've learned from Sandy Metz's book there to other languages as well. And since I don't know of any book that is language independent, that would be more instructional than the practical object-oriented design book, I'll recommend that as well, even if you are going to program in something different like Python or something similar. So those are two books that definitely touch practices and skills that every junior developer should know about and try to implement in their daily work. And for everything else, I think I'd have to spend more time researching and thinking, and I'll do that in preparation for an upcoming blog post. So if you are interested, go to monospacementor.com and subscribe to the RSS feed there. And the other way you can get it is definitely by subscribing to my newsletter, where the blog post will certainly be linked once it's done. You can subscribe for free and get my newsletter every Monday morning in your inbox. I need to sneeze. For some reason, I need to sneeze when there are temperature differences. And I think the reason that I had to sneeze now is that it is 26 degrees in my little office here. But I have the window open, and every time the wind blows in a little bit of fresh air, this change in temperature makes me sneeze. I call it the monospace thunder. Okay, so that's essential readings. If I can remember something else, I'll mention it later. And here's another non-question. This isn't a question, but I want to hear about your experiences with client-driven scope creep. Oh yes, don't we all suffer from that? We do client commissions from time to time. For example, I just sent out a quote earlier today for a customer who wanted a very specific custom varnish configuration that will require us to analyze their website traffic, the cookies their website is actually using and things like that. And then we'll have to craft a varnish configuration that optimizes cache performance for this specific website. And of course, it can always happen that the customer then comes back and says, yeah, but we also want to have this and that and this and that. I think the general way to deal with that is be specific and be firm. Because if you are specific from the get-go and write down what the actual goals and key deliverables are, it's easy to spot when scope starts to creep. And then comes in the second part, which is be firm and tell your customer that hasn't been part of the initial task or project. We will happily extend the project, but if you want us to add this to the scope, it'll add another day or another hour or something like that, and it'll cost you that amount of money on top. I think over time, you get a sense for when this is happening. It requires you to be vigilant, not just say yes to everything that comes from the customer, especially not say yes to stuff that comes from the customer that feels easy. I've made that mistake far too many times during my career, where I felt, okay, that wasn't in the initial discussion, but yeah, makes sense, seems easy. If I'm doing X already, I can add Y there, and it won't blow up in my face. And of course, you all know what happened. It blew up in my face, and I had to spend that additional day unpaid because I had already agreed to deliver it. And so checking every request that comes in from the customer for, is this a clarification? Is this a does this only refer to existing tasks on the docket inside the scope that we've agreed upon, or is it extending the scope? And then making yourself respond with no initially, and then go no, but we can add it at additional cost. I think that's the way to go here. And following up on that question, I guess, would you do a design before or after preparing a quote? That depends on how elaborate of a design is necessary. If the design is unknown and first needs to be first requires research and things like that, it'll be part of the quote. I can sketch out a rough outline, which I probably will have to do to create the quote in the first place. I can't just pluck numbers out of thin air, but an elaborate design will be part of the project, and sign up of this design then also be part of the project. We'll go in an ad break in a few seconds, so I'll hold up on answering questions, but please post them to qa.monospacementor.com. Oh, ad hasn't started yet. Was supposed to. Come on, Twitch, do your thing. Get this out of the way. I try to minimize ad breaks as much as I can, but they are a good way to spare people the pre-roll ads when they join the chat. Here we go. Hey, Balthazar. I sensed your presence. Sure, you answered this earlier, but how was DevOps Days? Looks like it was a good time, minus some hyper-targeted advertising making you think you were in Blade Runner. Yeah. What Balthazar is referring to is an ad that I passed by walking through Berlin. And if you would like to see what kind of ad that was, with my name on it, actually, you can join our Discord server because I've posted it there. You're more than welcome. We are a bunch of very friendly people talking about all kinds of DevOps stuff. So yeah, just to recap a little bit, DevOps Days was nice. It was nice to meet people that I knew from earlier DevOps Days, but I was a little bit disappointed in the topics that both were presented as talks in the morning and offered as open space contributions in the afternoon, because I'm missing the ops flavored questions and topics by now. Back in the day, we were talking about installing Grafana and Chef versus Puppet and things like that. And as I said earlier at the start of the stream, nowadays things seem to boil down to how to use Terraform with AWS to not require ops at all. Yeah, of course, that's not very interesting for me. So yeah, we seem to have lost a little bit the DevOps thing that we had in the early days of DevOps, I guess, where we actually looked at the dev side of things and the ops side of things and how to integrate them with each other. Now it seems much more developer-centric and dominated by developer-oriented topics. Praxis says, being a little bit pessimistic, but the question, how do we get our AWS bill down, is much more profitable than how would we self-host and multi-cloud this? Are you sure? Are you sure? Because... give me just a second. Because a href seems to disagree. I mean, yes, technically it's also about the question, how do we get our AWS bill down, but their answer was by self-hosting. And that means you need operations. You need people who are able to operate on-premise systems to take care of all the stuff that other people pay the AWS engineers to do. That's, for example, a topic that I would love to discuss with people. How do you build your own AWS? How not only do you self-host your application on millions of bucks worth of infrastructure, but also how do you get all the conveniences? How do you, for example, build a developer platform on your on-premise infrastructure? How do you enable people to create their own development environments, staging environments, things like that? How do you streamline all these processes that need to go on, even though you've pulled everything in-house? So that would be a great discussion where I could learn a lot. But a talk how we replaced our scripts with Terraform, or how Terraform saves us lots of manual labor clicking around the AWS console. That's really boring. There is another question on qa.monospacementor.com. What are some essential apps you install on every new machine? So for myself, I guess all my new machines will be installed with Fedora Silverblue, namely the Bluefin variant built by Universal Blue. And on top of that, the first thing that I usually then install is Chemois. Chemois is a .file manager that not only takes your repository of .files and copies them into your home directory where they need to belong. It can also run scripts that automatically install essential tools and things like that. And So if you're interested in how my .files repository looks like, you can simply use the .files command, !.files, to get the URL. But yeah, Chamois is definitely the first tool that I install. And the next problem that I'm going to run into on a new machine is passwords. I need passwords to install relevant services, to get access to GitHub and stuff like that. So 1Password is going to be the next application that follows right after Chamois. I'll probably even eventually integrate the 1Password CLI with Chamois, so Chamois can create more sensitive files automatically by accessing my 1Password vaults and adding access tokens or passwords to my specific .files, like a .netrc or a .aws credentials files or something like that. There's a list of tools that I also want to have on my machines all the time, and at the moment I haven't automated that much. Copying say a DNF command from my notes that I'm keeping about my installs is mostly the way that I go at the moment, because yeah, I only need to run that DNF command once. And so I haven't automated that. I've tried creating an Ansible playbook to set up machines, and it is still stuck in the early stages. I'll definitely try and drive that further, so that eventually I'll probably just install Ansible by hand and then run my playbook to get everything else on the machine. I told myself that I won't go over 1 hour of a stream today because the weather is brilliant today. It's 20 degrees outside, which probably means today is summer in Ireland and tomorrow there's going to be autumn. But here we are, already 17 minutes over again, because you people keep asking so many interesting questions. Another interesting question is, how do you get in the zone? So I guess there are multiple steps to that. First of all, I need to have the time to get into the zone, because of course that takes a little bit to really get focused and things like that. And that's why I try to apply time boxing, where I actually reserve specific amounts of time in my calendar so it doesn't get booked by customers or teammates. So, for example, I block 90 minutes for development work or something like that. That's the first step. That leaves me 90 minutes to hopefully get into the zone and get something done. Once these 90 minutes start, I usually put on some music that helps me focus, and also helps with not getting distracted by outside noises or having two kids inside noises. I might actually lock the door so that people can't simply barge in and ask me if they can have the Steam Deck, or ask me if I can help clearing out the dishwasher or something like that, because it's not only the kids that suddenly can rush in. So yeah, trying to keep distractions at bay is definitely another tactic that I'll apply here. I usually listen to the same kind of music that I'm using during this stream, which is either some kind of lo-fi music as is now, or synthwave, something instrumental at least. If I really want to drive myself, I put on some psytrance or something like that, and enable the full active noise cancelling in my Bose headphones. So, yeah, that then hopefully enables me to actually focus on the stuff that I need to do. And hopefully the necessary preconditions for even getting into the zone, or getting into, as Mihai Csikszentmihalyi calls it, a flow state, are actually met, because there are specific preconditions that flow state requires, which, for example, is that the task at hand does challenge you. If it's too boring, you won't get into a flow state. You'll find ways to distract yourself, despite all active noise cancelling. If it's too hard, it's going to frustrate you, which also hinders flow state. But if it's just in that Goldilocks zone where you are challenged, but not too much, that is definitely one of the necessary preconditions. So don't expect too much if you just have to do tax preparations or something like that, because yeah, it's going to be really, really hard to get into the zone with that. Yeah, so that's how I try to get into the zone. It doesn't happen all the time. I guess in that case, it's also a good idea to not get frustrated with yourself. Always be kind to yourself. As long as you can see that you are doing your best to get things done, don't be overly harsh to yourself and scold yourself for not meeting your self-imposed goals, I guess. Yeah, that's going to be my answer for how do you get into the zone. Bethesda wrote, I'm working on quite a bit of that slowly but surely. Part of my goals with my home lab adventures is that for every service I deploy, I get backups built in. I need a database, an operator manages it. That's actually a good idea, yep. Trying to get as much automated as possible. There's a new, albeit young, project coming along that's more like a CDK called PyInfra that I looked at. It's young, but it's quite neat. Oh, I'll have a look at that, even though I'm not into Python and I don't see myself adding Python to my arsenal. It can always inspire my own stuff in a more general way. PyInfra turns Python code into shell commands and runs them on your servers. Execute ad hoc commands and write declarative operations. See, that's what I call inspirational. I'll definitely have a look at that. Interesting. I'm curious how the syntax looks like, because this is, I think, pretty close to a chef alternative that I was thinking about, that I wanted to write in Ruby, of course, where we still have imperative programming, but in a way that allows us to automate these things. I guess what I'm roughly talking about here is Plumi, but in Ruby or something like that. So I'll definitely have a look at PyInfra. Thanks for that, at Balthazar. Tiberian says, got a Steam Deck and now my wife plays on it. Yeah, I'm having the same issue with my son. I got the Steam Deck for myself to finally get a little bit more into gaming, to incentivize myself to get more downtime and things like that. And what happened is that the Steam Deck is always with my 11-year-old, and I don't have any minute more in terms of downtime than before. Bethesda says, automation's obviously nice, but what I want is some sort of manifest that describes the service's full life cycle. One manifest include compute stuff, networking stuff, ingress stuff, backup stuff, appliance dependency stuff. how does this differ from Kubernetes? Do you want Kubernetes? Because that's how you get Kubernetes. It does not, but doesn't give you all that. You got to build it up. Ah, interesting. I'm not familiar with OpenShift, but isn't OpenShift something like that? Another layer on top of Kubernetes that adds more of these things? Like if I want an operator to make Postgres databases, I need a Postgres custom resource operator, yeah. And you would like to have something that gives you this operator out of the box? I don't think I've grasped the totality of your idea yet. It's definitely an interesting one. We should talk about that in our hangout, which is going to happen next week, Tuesday evening. We're going to have a hangout in the server room, my DevOps community of practice, which you can join for a moderate amount of money, a subscription starting at €5 per month. Which gives you not only hangouts and access to our community platform, but also lots of stuff more. So check out the serverroom.sh to learn more about it. And it's also a great way to support me, actually, because it's hardly more than you are going to pay for a Twitch subscription. But not only does your payment support me in doing what I'm doing, but also it gives you a lot of value back. More than your money's worth, I would claim, if I may say so. We're going to have another ad starting soon, and I think I'm also going to wrap things up, so I'll take the ad break to determine who we are going to raid. In the meantime, you can still post questions to qa.monospacementor.com if you'd like to hold me up for a little bit longer. Happy to do that. Otherwise, I wouldn't ask you to. So let's see. I think I found someone. Last time I tried to raid Orwellian, who's a Fedora developer. They were just wrapping up their stream as well, but this time it seems they're still going on. Oh, they've only just started 20 minutes ago, so yeah. That's who we are going to raid. Right after this ad break. Wait, it says ad in 37 minutes. Did the ad already run through? I have no idea. But still, let's go and raid Orwellian. All right, people. This was fun. Great to have at least one stream under my belt this week. Next week, we're going to have a little bit more. I'll be back with 2 live coding streams on Tuesday and Thursday. Another office hour on Friday, of course. And as I already said, we are going to have our server room hangout on Tuesday night. Join the community on the serverroom.sh if you want to participate, where we can have casual chats and lots more. And we'll probably talk about Balthazar's plans to automate his home lab. So let's start the raid to Orwellian. Say hi for me to them. And until next time, have a great weekend and take care.